Segment 2, Asia. Victor Davis Hanson, quote, one of two rather bleak Asian futures seems likely. Either an ascendant China will dictate the foreign policies of Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, or lots of new freelancing powers will appear to deter China since it cannot count on an insolvent U.S. for protection. Close quote. So which of those two do you consider more likely?
Well, they're not antithetical, as we just saw with the problem with the Japanese and the Chinese over a fishing boat. And what we're seeing is that China wants recognition, influence, and power commensurate with its economic success. So it's basically letting it be known to places like Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, South Korea, that this is our area of influence. And they're looking to us and saying, is that true or not? Because you're way over there and we have to deal with all of this Chinese money. And we're saying, we don't know. We have budget deficits, and so what's happening is, I think, that within the next 20 years, Japan will probably very seriously take a look at going nuclear. South Korea may have to go nuclear. And if they don't go nuclear, they're going to become under the influence of China's bullying. And I think that's the problem we're having right now.
Why shouldn't the future of Asia lie in Asian hands? This is a variation of the question I just asked about Europe. What is the American interest? Why shouldn't we, after getting drawn into the Second World War and having had to police all of the Pacific since the attack on Pearl Harbor, why shouldn't we say, thank goodness, Japan, you're a rich society. Taiwan, handle the problems yourselves. Because work it out, strike the balance.
History doesn't start at A and then end at Z. It's cyclical. So we looked at Asia before we got involved, and we saw what Japan's co-prosperity sphere was like, and then we saw again in the 50s what Mao and Stalin had envisioned for places as diverse as Korea or Vietnam, and we said, you know what, that's not going to happen. We're going to let these countries decide their own futures, and they're going to be consensual, and they're going to be capitalist. And the result, you can't criticize the result. I mean, we created things like everything from South Korean Kias to Japanese Hondas by allowing those people in Asia to be free and have their own destiny in their own hands. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to interfere. We're just trying to say if countries want to be self-determining and free, the United States is going to promote that. And we're going to do that because that's our values. And every time we didn't do that, we get drawn in because we're, as our president says, we're a Pacific country.
As recently as the Clinton administration, when China engaged in military maneuvers on the Strait of Taiwan, opposite Taiwan, we sent an aircraft carrier group through this, used to be called the Strait of Formosa. The strait, it still does on my map in the kitchen. Would we do that today?
I don't think so. I think that Obama believes, or President Obama believes, that problems in the world are a result of misunderstanding, miscommunication, mixed signals, and because he's so eloquent and charismatic, non-traditional, appeals to the way most of the people in the world think and look, he thinks, at least in his own words he says that, then by his singular diplomacy he can iron out these differences. He doesn't see that most problems in Asia and in the world in general both predated and transcended George Bush. In his way of thinking, Bush did it. He was a twangy Texan Christian. He didn't have my heritage and landscape that I bring to the problem, and therefore things got worse, and now I'm here and they're going to get better. And we've seen that therapeutic approach didn't quite work.
You talked about the result of free markets in Asia. Can't argue with that, you said. New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman, this is writing in September, quote, one-party autocracy certainly has its drawbacks, but when it is led by a reasonably enlightened group of people, as China is today, it can also have great advantages. It is not an accident that China is committed to overtaking us in electric cars, solar power, energy efficiency, batteries, nuclear power, and wind power, close quote. What do you make of this, what's called the Beijing consensus, this emerging view that maybe they actually are better suited to the future than our form of government?
If you gave me 10 minutes and the internet, I could give you, quote, almost a verbatim quote from what left-wing people said about Mussolini in the 20s and what right-wing people like Charles Lindbergh said about Germany. Same thing.
They make the trains run on time.
They make the trains and they're efficient. But China has a rendezvous with radical pollution problems, clean up demographic problems, its shrinking population.
Mark Stein says they'll grow old before they grow rich.
Yeah, one child, male, imbalance between the sexes. Somehow their brilliant foreign policy cooked up a nuclear Pakistan, a nuclear North Korea, a nuclear Russia, soon to be a nuclear Iran, and maybe in the future a nuclear Taiwan and Japan, all on their borders. So they've got problems that they have rendezvous with, all of them. And I don't get this fascination because you fly into the Shanghai airport and everything looks great in a way that Kennedy doesn't. Then suddenly they're the avatars of the future. What Thomas Friedman would need to do is get on a bicycle and go across rural China and then compare that with biking across Nebraska and see which society is more resilient and stable.